Now time for the first part of the second phase of the Senior Rotax competition. It's Heat 3, Groups A and C. Here's your starting grid. On the front row, it's going to be Macaulay Bishop versus Mark Schupman on the front row. Luca Thiel and Kevin Navis on row 2. Bolowetz and Timo Jungling, row 3. Luca Schlegel and Krit Knuren, row 4, with Kamil Bolosh and Iva Anagnostiidis completing the top 10. Lawrence Herbos and Flynn Fitters completing row 6. Row 7 is Alexandre Lemaire-Sicre with Alexandra Aim rounding out row 7. Mathis Carnejak and Danny Shields, row 8. Row 9, it's Paul Hamburg and Wout Kerstjens. Rounding out the top 20, it's Martin Gaiskens and Yannick Mike Gabrich with Luca Brima, Bram Plop and Rick Mewis with Kaz Boshouse completing the 24 strong. And here come the cheers for Rick in the chat. Let's see how he gets on, shall we? Death Star stop motion, you might want to retract your comment about saying, yo, they're cheating. Where did you get that idea from? How big are Rick's chances today? Who knows? Who knows? Luck of the draw, maybe. But maybe there could be a little bit of a fly in the ointment a little bit later on. Who knows what the weather might do? It's been unpredictable all the way through over the race. Delstar Stop Motion says Rick's chances are at least 4%. Well, at least it's better than having no odds at all. So the drivers now getting underway for their second and penultimate race of the heat stage of this competition. And hello to Macaulay's mum. Great to hear from you, Kitty. I hope you're keeping well back over at home. So, 10 minutes on the timer plus an additional lap. As they come out of the final corner into the tram lines, revs rise, lights are on, lights are out, first time we're underway. Good start by the pole sitter Macaulay Bishop as he leads the field into turns 1 and 2. And Bram Ossavada, you should have got your backside on the grid for this weekend, mate. It would have been good to see you. It's been a while, but look at the juxtaposing on the circuit as they go through turns 3, 4 and 5. Too wide at some point, but everyone's still making their way cleanly through so far, and that's now through down the Europalan. Of course, those wondering, there is a small circuit that we do here at Karting Gang that does entertain the general public and give them that little thrill of getting behind the wheel of a kart. And there are sometimes young drivers who get bitten by the bug, and then all of a sudden they end up buying a kart, and then the parents wonder, oh, where's our holiday money gone? That's just a fact of life in motorsport. Right, coming up to complete lap number 1 of this race. And leading the way is Macaulay Bishop, 0.4 ahead of Luca Thiel. Third, it's Bolowet, who's now going for second. The 324 gets through. Neat exchange from that perspective. And no, there's no POVs. There's no cameras actually allowed on these karts as part of the safety of the technical and sporting regulations, Guido, I'm afraid. So Luca Schlegel in 4th, Timo Jungling in 5th. And then we've got Kevin Navis, Camille Baloche, who had a bit of a difficult first heat, was battling at the sharp end and then ended up down towards the back end of the field. Danny Shields not having a good start to the race either. He's down 2 positions to 18th. The field makes its way through into turn 12. Lap 2 in the books, and Bolowet is now starting to chase after Macaulay Bishop for the race lead. He just put in a 56.019 second lap time, did the 324, and Rick Mewis is currently 22nd at the moment, folks, for those wondering that are watching. And great to see the interactivity on the chat. And a big thank you to those people that have opted to subscribe to the B&L Karting Series YouTube channel, which is broadcasting finals day tomorrow morning from around about 10:55 tomorrow before we get into the superheat. 7 minutes and 20 still to go on the timer. And Louette trying to close on in on Macaulay Bishop. Was slow, slightly faster in first sector, slower in sector 2, slightly quicker. Gap now down to just over 0.4 of a second. But Luca Thiel, bit of a disaster for the German driver, Fedor Motorsport, going off at Cafe Corner in his first heat earlier on today, but looks to be a little bit more settled. Of course, we were under wet race conditions, but now the track has evolved to the point where the tyres would literally be burnt to an absolute crisp in just a handful of laps. The amount of force, the amount of temperature and sheer abrasion on this surface here at Karting Genk would rip the W5 Mojo tyres to pieces. Bishop still leads the way. Louette has closed that gap by about half, and he's going to go for the race lead. That's Louette through. Bishop mounts a counter-offensive, can't get the lead back, and there is Timo Jungling now through on Luca Thiel. 4-horse race at the front of the field for the race lead. 5 minutes and 55 seconds still to go. And Detstar stop motion. We can't always bend to requests, I'm afraid. Doesn't always work that way. Is the track wet or dry, does Babble Cheese King say? Well, the track is actually pretty dry, so there is still some latent, slight surface water at certain parts on the circuit, but the track, for want of a better term, is dry. But Rick is still currently 22nd down at the running order of things. If you do want to catch up with the live timing, folks, if you are watching, there is a link in the description that you can click on. Now, Louette loses the lead to Jungling. And Luca Thiel barnstorms up the inside of Macaulay Bishop, who instantly gets back up the inside. Oh, and got bit sideways, trying to get through on Luca Thiel through turn 4. And the 367 managed to hold on for dear life. Corrected the steering, got the cart pointing the right way, and made the move stick. There is Luca Schlegel. Oh, no! Luca Schlegel went for the move, squeezed Luca Thiel, and then got caught out in his own right. I think Luca Schlegel, and he's just rejoined into traffic. He was very, very lucky indeed. He did not end up all 4 wheels in the air and possibly over. That was a bit of a hard hit. And that just goes to show when you're threading the eye of the needle, it's like I said earlier, that was a sign of desperation, not urgency, desperation. And there we have Lawrence Herbose. Oh, well, he's back in the fray. Iva Anagnostiidis now up into P6. She's got Krit Knorren behind her at the moment. That's the battle for P6 and P7. So good, solid consistency for the Australian. Now based out of Bicester in Oxfordshire. So not too far from some of the current Formula One teams in the United Kingdom. Such as Williams. But Luca Thiel trying to close back in on Lawrence Herbose and try and retake that 4th position. So Jungling continues to lead. What's the gap between him and Louette? It's expanded to nearly half a second. And I do read the chat, Detstar stop motion. Don't worry. I've got a lot of other things to concentrate on as well, and I have seen you've been spamming the chat with different cars, such as Supra, Tesla, amongst others. But with 3 minutes to go, battle for 4th, very much highly combustible at the moment, with Luca Thiel closing in on Lawrence Herbose into the braking zone at turn 7. Through the sweeper at 8. And Anagnostiidis trying to fend off Krit Knorren in the battle for P6. Paul Hamburg from Estonia up from 17th to 8th. So Paul now running with KR Sport these days. 2.5 minutes to go. Youngling just 0.3 of a second ahead of Boluet. Macaulay Bishop, Lawrence Herboz, Luca Thiel, Ava Anagnostiidis, Krik Nuren, Paul Hamburg, Camille Baloche and Mathis Carnijac round out the top 10. They're covered by just under 6.9 seconds. Luca Schlegel, after that moment with Luca Thiel, has ended up outside of the top 10 in 12th position, behind Wout Kirstens. So behind Schlegel, there's Kaz Boshouse, Martin Geiskens, Danny Shields, Alexandre Aim, Luca Prima, Mark Schuppmann, all the way 10 and 18th with Alexandre Lemaire-Sicre and Rick Mewis rounding out the top 20. All drivers still competing. Bram Plomp, Yannick Mike Gabrich, then we've got Kevin Navis and Flynn Fitters still running. We've got 1.5 minutes still to go, plus an additional lap, including this one. Paul Hamburg, fastest lap of the race, last time around, 55.458. Luca Thiel still trying to see if he can get the opportunity of getting past Lawrence Herboz, but through turn 7 he won't be able to do that. Neither through turn 8. So the drivers making their way through into turn 12 as we are already onto our penultimate lap. Timo Youngling still leading after 10 laps. Extends the gap between himself and Boluet to just over 4.5 of a second. Macaulay Bishop holding station in 3rd place. And there is still the battle for P4. Lawrence Herboz versus Luca Thiel. And Thiel unable to look for the move up the inside through turn 6, but could get the slipstream down into turn 7 and felt he was not probably close enough to try and facilitate the move up the inside. It's one thing to catch somebody, it's a completely different thing to try and pass them. So timer has expired. We've got one more lap to go. So just 1.36 kilometres. Gap between first and second now nearly half a second. Herboz goes on the defensive. Krik Nuren has got Paul Hamburg behind for close company, I think. They were just under 1/10 of a second apart. That's allowed Ava Anagnostiidis to get away into the distance in 6th place. And our leaders now head off the Europlan for what is the final time. Timo Youngling, who was denied the victory a little bit earlier on, looking to strike whilst the iron is hot here at Karting Genk. As there is a little bit of a slightly dark shadow starting to make its presence felt here at the circuit. So a little bit of fading of the general natural lights that we've got here at the track. But out of the final corner, it is Timo Youngling that picks up the race victory. Ahead of Boluet, Macaulay Bishop, who rounds out the top 3. Lawrence Herboz finishes ahead of Luca Thiel. And Ava Anagnostiidis was not that far behind them at the flag, and she finishes 6th. Paul Hamburg finishes 7th, ahead of Krik Nuren. Mathis Carnijac and Camille Baloche round out the top 10. Wout Kirstens, Luca Schlegel, Martin Geiskens, Danny Shields, Alexandre Aim, Luca Prima, Kaz Boshouse, Mark Schuppmann, Alexandre Lemaire-Sicre, Rick Mewis rounds out the top 20 with Bram Plomp, Yannick Mike Gabrich, and then Kevin Navis just waiting for Flynn Fitters to cross the line. But Timo Youngling picks up his first win of the weekend.